Hello, I'm Nikke, and welcome to my Weiss Schwarz deck building guide featuring the new set, Nikke Goddess of Victory. Now since this is a deck building tutorial and I'm just using the new set, Nikke, as an example, I'm going to start from the beginning. This video will assume though that you know the basic rules to Weiss Schwarz, so I'm not going to go over how to play, so let's just get into it then. First off, ratios. You'll want to run some number of cards at every level, except potentially level 2. You want to succeed. Starting off, level 0. At level 0, you can generally expect to be running 16 to 20 cards. Now, like everything else in this video, nothing is a hard rule, but you probably don't want to go below 14 cards, as you'll have a hard time finding them in your opening hand. Probably don't want to go above 25 because you won't have any room for many other cards. Level 0 is going to be home to most of your utility cards. Cards that will get you other cards you need, cards that can get you out of bad deck states, cards that can get rid of cards from your hands. Usually one beater that you will ideally want to see in your opening hand to deal with your opponent's level 0s. At level 1, you'll generally want to run 4 to 12 cards. This greatly depends on your deck and how good your level 1 cards are, but in a standard deck that runs a level 1 climax combo and a level 3 climax combo, you'll generally want to at least play the 4 level 1 climax combo cards, and often an off combo beater that does something else really good for your deck. Level 2 card pools come in two varieties: a deck that cares about its level 2 cards, usually if it's running a level 2 combo or standby, and decks that do not care about their level 2 cards. In a deck that does care, you'll often be running around 8 level 2 cards, and in a deck that doesn't, you may not be running any at all. And if you are, it's usually backups or some other strong utility cards. Level 2 generally contains your backups, stronger assists, heaters for standby decks, board or deck disruption cards. That said, a lot of Nikke builds run a lot of level 2s anyway. Level 3 is generally your finishers. Some decks will only run 4, usually your level 3 combo, but they can run as many as 12. Usually only getting that high when you need to account for experience conditions. Level 3s you see are generally climax combo finishers, off combo finishers, early play healers, deck disruption cards, and generally only played by standby decks, but strong back row support cards. Now, how many of a card should you run? Need to see a card in multiple copies, multiple times a game, or just need to see it as early as possible? You should run 4 copies of it. Cards like this are generally your climax combos, level 0 beaters, or strong utility effects that you will be cycling. You want to see a card in every game, and often multiple times, but you don't necessarily need to see multiple copies at once. You probably want to run it at 3. Cards like this are your utility cards that cover for your deck's weaknesses, early play healers generally, and level 1 or 2 beaters. If you want to see a card once or twice in a game, or if you don't want to see multiple in your hand at once, you can run it as a 2 of. Less important utility, back row assists, sometimes early plays, and level 3 off finishers all fit into this category. You want to see a card in your deck as an option, but it's not part of your main game plan. Run it as a 1 of. These cards are generally answers to your opponent's deck, or answers to bad deck or game states that you could be in. Backups, bouncers, free refreshers, and situational utility usually fit into this category. Now you know roughly how many cards you should put into each level, and roughly how many copies of them you should run. You're ready to build a deck now, right? Of course you're not. I'm going to show you my deck building strategies in just a moment, but first, let's talk about card types. Keep in mind, a card can be more than one type. Usually, the more types it is, the more valuable it is in a deck. First is your climax combos, the core of your deck. Some decks can get away with running 3 different combos, but in general, you should stick to 2 different ones. Both of these will generally stick to 4 copies apiece, giving you a grand total of 8 cards that occupy this slot. There will be exceptions, but as you get more experience, you'll be able to see those exceptions easy. Second are your beaters, cards that hit big power numbers. Generally, you want to run 4 copies of your beater at level 0. This isn't always the case, and in some decks, you can get away without running any beaters here. Generally, you want something that can answer your opponent's board at level 0. At level 1, you can run as little as 0 if your only goal is using your level 1 combo, but I would run as many as 6 if the set I'm building has good beaters. At level 2, most you will probably want to run is about 4. And that is only in standby decks. Otherwise, if your set has a good one that deals with usually level 3s, 2 is the most I would run. Next are your turn 1 plays. The beater is generally one of your turn 1 play cards, but more cards can fit into this category. Cards that don't have an on-play stock cost for their effect can also fit into this category. There isn't a real set number for this, but I usually want at least 4 cards like this, but the more I can fit into the deck, the better. Next up are Brainstormers. Not all cards I would fit into this category are specifically Brainstormers, but all of them should have an activated effect that mills cards out of your deck, potentially gets you more cards for using them. You should generally run 3 or 4 copies of these in a deck, but at bare minimum, if your deck is really good at finding specific cards and you have other back row cards you want to run, you can run these at 2 copies. Next are +1s, cards that will get you 1 or more extra cards in hand when their effect is used. These are generally cards that either pay a stock and usually put a card from deck or waiting room into clock, search or salvage specific cards, or cards that move cards to the back row, or cards that bounce themselves or others back to hand. Or in Nikke's case, a card that puts the top card of your stock into clock, checks 6 cards for 1 character, then for some reason gives you a top check 2. Generally, you want to run at least 2 of these in a deck, but some decks will run up to 8 copies of these effects. Then we have mill effects. These cards get you out of bad deck states by sending cards from the top of your deck to waiting room. Most decks will want to run some number of these cards. If your level 1 combo mills your deck, you probably don't need to run as many of these. The minimum I would run is around 2. Maximum is somewhere around 8. Brainstormers technically count as mill, but generally you don't want to include them in this count. Next we have backups. Cards that protect your cards. Some decks can get away with running none, but generally you'll want to run at least 1 anti-early play backup, potentially other good disruptive or protective effects like memory kick or anti-damage or rest counters. In normal deck, 3 would be the limit. That's only if you have 3 really good backups in your set. Otherwise, 1 or 2. Standby decks don't always use more, but they can get away with running up to 5. Usually when they add in level 1 2k counters. Healers. They heal you. In the name. You definitely want at least 1 healer in your deck so you don't end up in a situation where you're 3-6 and doing anything but playing a healer will kill you. Generally outside of your level 3 combo having a heal effect, you want 2 to 4 healers. Ideally ones that come out early at level 2. Off finishers. Cards with a finisher effect, like dealing extra damage, but don't require a climax. Some decks can get away without running any, but as a general rule, you probably want 2 cards in your deck that don't require a climax to activate their finisher effect. Finally, we have hand fix. These cards remove cards that you don't want from your hand and get you another card. Whether it's search, salvage, clock, draw, or mill effects, you generally want to have as many of these as your deck will allow you to. Though, there actually are 2 other card types to discuss, events and climaxes. Cards are not characters, which means most of your cards will not be able to search them out. In case of events, when you play them, there will generally be some immediate effect, then they go to the waiting room. Some decks don't use them at all, other decks revolve entirely around them. The amount you play varies on how much your deck cares about them and how good they are. Nikke does have a couple good events. Climaxes, if you're a new player, you only are allowed to put 8 in your deck. They cancel damage when you reveal them for damage, and they have special triggers that do special things. They are also used as combo tools for your decks, since some of your characters will have combos with them. For the reasons mentioned, you run 8. Okay, so at this point, I may have given you information overload, so we're finally going to build some decks. First and easiest, net decking. So, net decking. pretty easy. You just go to a website that has deck lists on it, and you just go and look at those deck lists, and you find one that you like, and then you just take it. You can change a couple cards here and there, but there you go. So yeah, find a list online that looks pretty good to you. Ideally, the list has some competitive results. Usually something like topping a regional, or in this case, Worlds, is ideal. From there, you can easily swap out cards based on your playstyle and things you expect to see in your tournaments or casual play, and you're done. But you're here because you want to make a deck yourself. So from here, there are 3 ideas on how to build a deck. Building around combos, building around a character, or building around a cool interaction. For this video's example, I'll be building around combos. When building around combos, find 1 or 2 combos that you think are really cool, or really good, or both, and you build the entirety of the deck around supporting them. This is the most common deck building strategy. Now, you can build around 2 lower level combos and fill out the rest of your deck with off finishers to support them. That feels a little too advanced for this video, so we'll just do a level 1 plus combo and a level 3 finisher combo. So I was editing the video and I came to the realization that the deck building part was just going to take way too long. So enjoy the fast forwarded video as I explain my methodology. If there's enough interest in the deck building portion, I can release that as a standalone video. First thing I do is look up all the card lists for all the sets available in the series. In Nikke's case, there's just one. In the past, I would use a different site called Little Akiba, and that is still my go-to for old Weiss sets. But in the past few years, Weiss Tea Time came around, and I've been loving using them instead. What's great about this method, rather than using a deck builder like Decklog or Encore decks, is that all the cards are right there in front of you to see. And in the case of Weiss Tea Time, I can Control F to look for keywords that I want to see very quickly. But as for actually looking through the cards, if it's a set I've never looked at before, I tend to look at all the double Rs first to see what, for the most part, are going to be all the good cards. And then I get an overall feel for what the basic strategy or theme they are leaning into with the card design of the set. Then I'll look over all of the combos, usually starting with the level 3 combos to get an idea of what are the strong combos and what finisher I am going to need to lean into and what it requires for setup. From there, I do usually start building the deck with that finisher combo in mind, and if there isn't a standout finisher combo in the set, I'll start looking around the off finishers and level 2 and below combos to see if there's anything good there. Once I've found that, I start looking for cards to support the combos I've chosen, asking myself questions like what cards play well with the combos and what cards alleviate some of the weaknesses of them. In the case of the build I ended up going for this video, I chose Dorothy level 3 combo and Modernia level 1 combo. Dorothy is a finisher that requires a lot of stock up front, and you'll need to have at least 9 stock going into level 3 if you want to pull off triple Dorothy combo. Additionally, she will be giving all of your cards with soul triggers shot triggers, so we want to have soul triggers to make triggering a card with soul trigger easier. Modernia level 1 combo has a soul trigger, and the 2-1 Snow White assist gives Door Climax's soul triggers, which just with those 3 cards give the deck effectively 10 soul triggers immediately. Add in the trial deck Anise level 0 for another card that has a soul trigger that really shouldn't, and we're already at 14 soul triggers. Privity level 2 is also an obvious choice since she gets shot trigger when we have a climax in our climax area, and she already has a soul trigger. So with triple Dorothy triggering a Privity, we get an attack for 4 damage, and if that cancels, we get 4 cancel burn 1s. But we can't just focus on Dorothy here. Modernia level 1 combo can get us the extra stock we need for our combo, but needs a little help to make sure she top checks a card with level 2 or higher. Cards like the Trial Deck Scarlet level 0, the Summer Rappy 0, the Trial Deck Anise 0, and the Crown Brainstormer all give us top check knowledge or setup, increasing our chances of getting extra stock from Modernia. That pretty much wraps up the cards that support our combos outside of a couple 1-ofs. The Trial Deck Privity Brainstormer has a good on-play effect that lets us put a card from hand into stock when we play her. Since Dorothy doesn't require hand but does require stock, as long as we have a couple cards in hand to spare, getting free stock from the Privity Brainstormer when we need it is absolutely fantastic. The Neon Zero has the ability to send herself to bottom deck and discard a card to freely search for any character. This is another card that effectively lets you trade one card in hand for one extra stock if you hadn't already gotten whatever card you needed. Additionally, this card can be an emergency shot trigger in the case that you don't trigger a card with a soul trigger. Her secondary effect being when you have a climax with the shot trigger in your climax zone, she gains shot trigger in all zones. While you don't have a shot trigger in this deck, Dorothy does give all cards with soul trigger shot trigger, including her gate climax that she currently has in play. Finally, the Goddess of Victory event bounces 2 of your opponent's characters when used, so if your opponent has a way to nullify your Dorothy combos, this card allows you to direct attack twice so they never get the chance to do that. After all that, we just need to cover for any weaknesses the deck has and put any additional disruption that we might need. The core of this deck already does cover for weaknesses of the combos pretty well. The main one being Modernia combo doesn't actually move through the deck all that well, but to compensate for it, the Trial Deck Scarlet, the Crown Brainstormer, and the Summer Rappy all give us the ability to move through our deck pretty fast. The only 2 weaknesses at this point are being able to salvage specific cards during your main phase and getting to specific climaxes we need without having to trigger one of our gates. To get around that and also have one more Brainstormer, I've settled on the Red Hood Brainstormer. It has a cool additional effect that, while situational, can be very beneficial on top of being a salvage Brainstormer. The Scarlet Black Shadow Zero is also a great card since, in addition to being a climax swapper, it also functions as a +1 with its send to waiting room effect. After that is Disruption. The set only has one anti-early play backup, so I'm going to put one of that into the deck. Ludmilla has a good act effect to bounce one of your opponent's problem cards and additionally gives 2 of our characters 1500 power on play, which can sometimes help break your opponent's board. Mass is a great card for when your opponent's too compressed and you just want to throw all the trash in their waiting room back into their deck. After all, while our combo is able to burn our opponent a lot, it would probably rather just stick one big hit on them. Finally, I'm looking for cards to act as my early play healer to prevent early death to some big, far-reaching combos, and off finishers for the very likely case that I can't get triple Dorothy on the board. The Alice level 3 can act as both, being an early play healer with an easy condition and a good effect that lets you top deck any character she reverses. This effect also acts as disruption for cards with on-send to waiting room effects and encore effects. Even her heal effect is better than usual, allowing her to also act as hand fix since you discard one card to put the top card of your clock to your hand instead of just putting that card into waiting room. So 3 Dorothys cost 9 stock, but 2 only cost 6. If we have enough stocked for 2, we can use the level 3 trial deck Modernia that has the on-play effect to put a card from hand onto your field for free. This allows you to have 3 level 3s for 4 stock, but also means we get access to her off finisher effect that lets us discard 2 cards to mill the bottom 4 cards of our opponent's deck and burning them for X damage equal to the climaxes milled, otherwise known as the Icy Tail effect. Finally, the last card we will be looking at is the Red Hood level 3. While we aren't using her climax combo, we can use her off finisher effect to make her 13,500 power on play with on reverse clock kick. Additionally, the Snow White 2-1 lets us play her at level 2, which gives us the opportunity to use her as disruption by running over a card with higher power that we usually can't deal with. For our ratios, at level 0, this deck has 18 cards, at level 1, it has 5, level 2 has 9 cards, which is a little high, but we want level 2 and 3s in this deck for more soul triggers. At level 3, this deck has 10 cards, and then of course, 8 climaxes. Then for the card types, we have 8 of our climax combos, and there are 8 climaxes to go with them. We only have 4 beaters with just the Trial Deck Scarlet Zeros. 14 of our level 0s we don't mind playing turn 1, so we can kind of say we have 14 turn 1 plays. None of them are ideal, but it's better than not wanting to play any of our level 0s on turn 1. We got 4 Brainstormers, 2 of them are the check 3 add a card variety, 1 is a draw Brainstormer, and 1 is a salvage Brainstormer. We have 7 cards that are +1s, the 4 Scarlets, actually they are both Scarlets, the 4 Trial Deck Scarlets, and the 3 Climax Swapper Black Scarlets. 8 mill cards, and in this case I'm counting the Crown Brainstormer because if she hits a climax she can go through an additional 3 cards.
Just the one backup for the anti-early play effect. This deck doesn't really care if its cards live to the next turn. 3 healers outside of our level 3 combo. 6 cards that we can count as off finishers since the Alice is pulling double duty on that. 10 cards have hand fix abilities. And then I didn't go over them too much in the earlier part, but 9 of our cards can be counted as disruption. Finally, there are 2 different cards that don't quite fit into any category here. The Privity level 2's secondary ability is kind of a heal and mill hybrid because it's a refresher, effectively meaning that she mills 6 cards and then prevents us from taking the penalty point of damage. But the main point of this card is for its first effect, turning itself into a shot trigger if we have a climax. That kind of makes this card an off finisher, but also just a consistency piece for our finisher combos effect. Additionally, the 2/1 Snow White on its own is just a power boost to our level 3s, but it gives us access to disruption and an off finisher card, and access to a consistency boost for our level 3 combo. So the main point of both of them is consistency for our level 3 combo, so I'll just list them as consistency. And that's it for the deck building portion. If you have more questions, I'm happy to answer them in the comments, but back to the main part of the video.
You don't have to use every card that I'm using, but I'm just building a deck the way I feel is best. If there's a card you really like or think is really good that I'm not running, try it out. When I'm building decks without looking at what other people are doing, a lot of the time my first attempt doesn't work out all that well. You just have to keep looking for cards that fix the issues with your deck, or change the ratios on cards that you are using. As for the other deck building styles, the easiest is building around a character. Oftentimes, a set won't have enough cards for that one character to make a whole deck. Just use as many of their cards that make sense as you can, and supplement the deck with other cards to make it better. Oftentimes, decks like these won't be the best because you are heavily restricting yourself on what cards you are using. Other times, looking at you, Quint, you can build a top-tier deck using only one character's cards. Just depends on the set and what your goals are when building the deck. Finally, you can build around interaction. Usually, if you see a card or cards with an abusable effect, sometimes it's more obvious than usual, you can build a whole deck around making that effect go off as well or as many times as possible. The card with the most abusable effect in Nikke, in my opinion, is the Modernia Level 1 combo. You always set up the top of your deck with a level 2 or higher card, you always get the extra stock. Then you can use that extra stock on whatever you want. I think that's why the door standby list works so well. You get a bunch of extra stock and probably level 3s in hand, and you convert that into multiple early play healers and other cards with big expensive effects through standby triggers or hard playing them from your hand. Of course, as you saw, there are multiple ways to set up your deck for the Modernia combo. To sum it all up, I gave you the general numbers of cards you should be playing at every level. I told you why you should play a card at the different numbers of copies. I told you the general card types that you'll be wanting to play in your deck. Once you know that, you just need to focus in on some cards that you want to use as the core of your deck, then look through your set until you find cards that support those cards in the best way you can. And hopefully once you're done with that, you can assemble a deck that helps you win games. So that'll do it for this video. I hope this helps you as you build decks for Nikke and all other sets, and welcome to the world of deck building in Weiss Schwarz. Give this video a like if you thought it was interesting, leave a comment if you have something to say, subscribe if you want to see more video game and Weiss Schwarz related content in the future, and I'll see you in the next one.